So we'll begin and just go into your less dominant cross-legged position and just take a little bit of time adjusting the flesh of the thighs. You can roll the inner thighs down, lift the outer thighs up. Just kind of rock back and forth on your sitting bones, inviting more balance until you feel kind of even and centered over your sitting bones. Make sure you have enough support underneath you that your lower back is not rounded, and then aligning your shoulders above your hips. And just take a moment to sense that your thigh bones are kind of angled toward the floor rather than up toward the ceiling. And if you see that they're not angling down, you might add more height underneath you so that we feel kind of a descent from the roots of our thighs down to the knees, which can help us feel more anchored in the legs. And then adjusting your skull directly above the spine, not tilting the chin up or down, just kind of level with the floor. See if you can keep your shoulders sitting back as you join your hands together in front of the heart. Closing your eyes, looking away from the brain toward the heart, toward the cheeks. And then just nothing more is needed except to hold these very kind of delicate, wise actions in the body. No excessive gripping. So we learn the kind of the finesse of pranayama through the finesse and sensitivity that we discover with asana, with the postures. And one big piece of pranayama is no excessive gripping in the body. So of course, there's certain efforts that are required to maintain what you've established here seated. But then just let any excessive or superfluous effort fall away. Finding the softness behind the eyes, the cheeks and forehead, the jaw, the tongue, the abdomen. Just taking enough time to sit quietly and arrive to align yourself with a more present state of mind. Bearing witness to your breathing, to any sensations you feel. Noticing anything you detect around you, maybe in your room or beyond the room. And on an exhale, keeping your chest lifted, bowing toward the chest. Letting your hands move down to your thighs. And on an in-breath, raise your head. Let your eyes softly open. And welcome. We'll bring ourselves into child's pose, which is a really great way to start a practice. Kind of surrendering the ego, allowing the spine to extend from the brainstem to the tailbone, and taking head support so that your brain can quiet down. So if the floor is too far away, make sure to either tuck your hands or fists underneath your head, or you could use another prop. Keeping the knees nice and wide so that the torso can come down nice and low, that your legs aren't blocking the trunk from descending. And gently taking the tip of the tailbone down toward the floor. And first, just kind of waking up the extension of your spine, running from top to bottom. And starting to feel the breath expanding the back body. Bringing some attention into your hip joints, your knees, your ankles, your neck, elbows, shoulders. And for the next 3 exhales, we're going to be kind of exploring our exhales in pranayama later. So for the next 3 exhales, just letting those breaths completely empty. We often shortchange the exhale when we're not thinking about our breaths, when we're not on our mats. And this keeps us in a somewhat anxious state. And this is a very good pose for helping us eliminate the full exhale because we're compacting the front body, the diaphragm. Just letting those next 2 exhales trail off to their, I call it the vanishing point. And maybe becoming a little more passive with your inhales, just watching the body find enough breath. Letting the breath fill back in. And after your next exhalation, you're going to start to come out of child's pose. And of course, always just observing that your transitions are gentle, that you're trying to keep your senses kind of quieter in this restorative practice. And we're going to set up for a hero pose, but we're also going to recline hero pose. And I wanted to offer a very mild option for reclining hero pose, which is to use your chair behind you. So reclining hero pose can be quite challenging for a lot of us, including myself. So the chair version is a chair set up behind your hero pose. So I'm going to be facing this way. I have a blanket over the chair, but I'm also going to put my bolster. And if you don't have a bolster, you can substitute a rolled yoga mat. You could wrap a blanket around a yoga mat. There's a lot of creative ways you can kind of make a bolster. But what we're going to do first is sit in hero pose before we recline. So you want to set this up behind you. And for some of us, I understand we don't need this much support. So if you're one of those people that can either come directly down, or you can come down on the floor with just a bolster underneath you or a bolster on a couple blocks. You have to start to kind of learn what your setups are for these various poses. So you'll have to find your own setup and set that up so that we can recline after we do the seated version. So I like to sit on a blanket with my shins. You want to have your feet wider than your knees. And you want to have something supporting your sitting bones. Some of us, it's directly down to the floor. Some of us, it's a thin layer of blanket. Some of us, it's more like a block. And then make sure your toes are all evenly against the floor, that you're not kind of turning into the big toes. And you can adjust the flesh of the calf muscles, roll them out. And you can take the underneath side of your thigh and roll it in, which will help your knees align. And then you're going to just take your fingertips once you're set up and seated to the soles of your feet, which will help you adjust your shoulders to align with your hips. And then once you're there, you're going to take your skull and just place it directly over the spine. For most of us, that means moving the head slightly back. And then close your eyes and gently take the tailbone in. And soften your jaw. And just starting to understand the necessary effort, maintaining the wise actions of those necessary efforts. But then again, watching for the unnecessary gripping. So we don't want to do any gripping where it isn't needed. Maybe there's some hardness around your eyes. Maybe the pelvic tilt is not quite comfortable or neutral. Maybe your lower back is bothering you. And keep your gaze soft and pointed down. Your eyes are closed. Sometimes the gripping is because we haven't supported ourselves enough, so you might need to actually find something to support the pose so that you can release that gripping that's trying to support yourself. And again, I just want you to hold the pose for another 5 breaths and just become a little more interested in the exhalation, following the breath out, not forcing it, not hardening the abdomen at all, just kind of watching the breath empty from the body. A different feeling now in this position. Let your eyes blink open. And you're going to start to recline back on whatever setup you've created for yourself. And you might need to adjust the chair if you're using a chair so that it's the right distance from your body. As you recline back, the pelvic tilt has to increase so that if we take something back, we move something forward to keep the body in balance, in harmony. You might continue with your hands kind of pressing into your feet. And at some point, you might explore raising the arms overhead. And if you're able to do so, just powering down around the eyes. You might close them, you might look down, you might just soften your gaze. Your eyes are open, but not really seeking out anything in the room. So finding that really precise point where you're using only the effort needed to be here in wise actions, but nothing extra, no extraneous effort. And see if you can bring just a little bit of control to the front ribs. Gently moving the inner edges of your front ribs towards each other. And gently hugging them toward the back body. If your arms are still overhead, you can start to bring them down toward the feet or back toward the feet. And then keeping your chest really in the foreground, start to come back upright. Good. We're going to release the legs now with a standing Uttanasana with the chair set up. So if you don't have a chair, you'll just set one up and put a blanket and maybe additional blankets or bolster on top of that. And if you're kneeling on a blanket for the shins, you can move that aside. I'm going to have to move my camera back a little bit here. It's good to have the chair, the 4 feet of the chair on the mat, so that your chair doesn't move away from you. And we'll be setting ourselves up so that the legs remain, the hips over the heels, so your legs are vertical. And then you're going to create a little surface to rest your head on, and it could be including your arms. It might be that your arms are elsewhere. So you're going to kind of find your most comfortable head resting position. It can be on the forehead or the crown, and your feet should be a little bit more open than hip width, but toes, of course, in front of heels. You might find that you want to reduce the height under your head. And do try to work toward a straighter, more fully extended leg, both legs. And in every pose, all these different orientations, we put our bodies against gravity, just notice how the breath shows up. Make sure the feet aren't unnecessarily gripping. Try to balance your feet. They might be gripping because they're not balanced. They might be gripping just because they're used to gripping. And just notice what's talking to you here in your body. And are you listening? Are you having a dialogue? Are you ignoring? And we're just going to slightly change this up so that it becomes Partanasana. So the right foot will step kind of under your chair, the left foot will step back. Your feet are going to be wider than, you're not on a balance beam so that you feel stable. You're not trying to wobble on one line across your mat. And then you're just going to gently rotate your hips by drawing your right heel toward yourself and your left toes toward yourself. So you're kind of squeezing those feet together. But you're still resting your head. You're gently trying to roll the outer right hip back so that you're not getting all scrunched up there. And you're keeping the legs straight and compacting both legs front to back. And as the legs move back and as you anchor into the back heel, you can, every in-breath, extend the torso forward, elongate the trunk. Okay, we're going to switch to the other side. Stepping the left foot forward, right foot back. Working with those same actions to feel a little more spaciousness around the left hip joint by rolling the flesh kind of toward the back of your mat. Imagining the sides of the torso are becoming more and more even with each other. Let your legs anchor you so you can really propel the trunk forward and elongate the torso. And now gently lifting your head, we're going to transition the chair 90 degrees so that we can come to the wide standing forward bend with head support. So using the chair to kind of stabilize you, you'll stretch the feet nice and wide with the toes forward, balancing the weight bearing over the feet so that you're surely aligned with the hips and the heels on the same plane, as if you're up against the wall with your backs of your legs. And then you can come down, resting your head, again, using the arms or not. Really make this your own. If the brain is quiet and present, that's a really good sign. If the brain is quiet and not present, you're probably underwhelmed. And if the brain is not quiet and not present, you're probably overwhelmed. So once you've set up the pose, just go back in and kind of fine tune it so you're not using any effort not needed. You feel no gripping where it isn't needed. Of course, there's certain areas that we have to kind of keep contracted to maintain the integrity, the alignment. A little bit of control with the front body so you're not just falling into your front body, scooping the front body toward the back body. Keeping a little bit of a upward moving line of energy in the arches of your feet. Working toward a straighter leg. See if you can pull the outer ankle bones in without collapsing the arches of your feet. And now we're going to start to help ourselves come up. And you can start to move the feet in to come closer together. We're going to come into a seated position so that we can come into Uphavishta Konasana, so sitting with the legs wide, folding forward. So you can keep your chair where it is, and you're going to sit behind it on the corner of a blanket, which you can make as bulky as you'd like. As long as you're working with a corner, you can kind of fold that blanket to make that corner higher so that your lower back is upright. That's always kind of the determining factor. We give ourselves as much height as we need to get the lower back flat or concave, just as long as it's not rounded. And then you'll sit on that corner so that the tailbone has the elevation, but the sitting bones are not elevated. So you might have to do that maneuver of lifting the flesh of the buttocks, kind of spreading it around the corner of your blanket. So we have this three-pronged connection with the floor, and we want the tailbone to be boosted a little bit. And then you'll open your legs wide to your fullest. And you might bifurcate the calf muscles if you're kind of seeing a lot of gapping behind the knees. Just have the legs sit down as well as you can. Kneecaps looking up, toes looking up. And whatever kind of correction you need so that your toes are right over your heels. They're not falling back or forward. And then just start with your hands behind you on your fingertips and help your chest lift forward and up. as you connect with that three-prong connection with the floor. And really anchor into your legs. And then slowly begin to come forward with the torso. The chair is right there, so taking your first edge, which might be pretty moderate and mild, making your head connect with something, whether it's maybe prayer hands. If you're feeling really tight today, you might just take your elbows to your chair and put your prayer hands against your forehead. You can always push or slide the chair forward. So really play with it to find that first physical edge where you're occupied enough, but you're not stressed or bored. So the legs remain effortful, but the face doesn't need to have any hardness. The eyes don't, the jaw doesn't. The shoulders should be in a position where they're just passive. And this forward extension is only as good as the effort coming from the legs. And at this point, your lower back is still not rounded. And as the pose evolves and as the body elongates, let your position adjust as needed. Your chair might move forward, your head might come down. And now you're going to start to align your torso back upright. We're going to be moving our chair so that it sits above the right leg. And so now as we turn toward the right leg, really emphasize the anchoring effect of your left leg. Really press it down into the floor. And then use your fingertips to help you really revolve your torso to the right. And then you're going to just come forward over that leg and rest your head again. And do your best to align your chest with that right leg. And meanwhile, you're giving a lot of attention and effort to the left leg. You should feel a nice opening on the left side body. If you feel kind of like you're getting a little bit jammed up in the right side body, remember the technique to try to roll the flesh of the outer right hip back to open some space in the hip joint. And even though you're not staring at your left leg, you should still sense that your toes are above your heel, that the gap between the knee and the floor is minimal. And try to sense that this turning, Parshva Uphavishta Konasana, is only as good as that left leg. That's really what is sourcing our ability to turn and forward extend. And just like the centered Uphavishta, you can start to elongate, push the chair away and come closer to your leg as you're ready. And for the next 5 or 6 breaths, see if you can notice a pause at the end of the exhalation. This moment where the body is sated by breath, we're not breathing out or in. There's just a pause. And you're going to start to help yourself come up. We're going to have to transfer the chair all the way to the left. And then just take a moment to really press down that right leg. Use your fingertips to help you turn as well as you can with your torso upright. And then coming forward to that first edge where your head is supported. You have the wise actions going. There's enough sensation, but not too much. Tracking that edge as you hold a pose. You can continue to kind of evolve in that pose, go deeper as you're ready for it. And if the body is stressed, you won't have that pause at the end of the exhalation. So using the breath as another tool to kind of examine how you're showing up in your poses. Now you're going to come up on an in breath. Just adjust your torso back to center. You can slide your legs together one at a time and just sit forward off the blanket corner. So you're off of it. And just give your legs a little bit of a release. So you can do what you need to do here. Bounce the legs. You might massage them. Just let go of the effort. And we're going to come onto our backs. We're going to use the chair for the feet. We're going to do a version of figure 4 hip opener with the chair. So the chair will be on your mat so that it's not going to slide on you. That's important. So make sure all the feet are on the mat. And then what you have to really kind of determine for your own needs is your distance from the chair. So what we're going to do is we're going to be putting our heels on the chair. And then we'll be taking the right ankle to the left thigh. So the way you can control the sensation, if it's too much, your butt will come away from the chair. And if you need more, you're going to scoot your butt toward the chair. Okay, so your heels are on the chair. right ankle comes to left thigh, and then you're going to either move your butt away or closer so that you have enough going on in your right hip, but not too much that it's overwhelming. And then we're going to take the arms overhead with the palms face up. Tilt the chin toward the chest. And then do your best to press the knee away from your chest. So you're moving it away from the chest. You're kind of trying to tap into your right hip joint. And the arms overhead are really there to help you keep the sides of the torso even. Because in hip openers, we can really easily kind of sneak out of them by shortening, in this case, the left side body. So keep your left side body nice and long, kind of activating those left fingertips as you press that right knee away from your chest. And if you want, if it's helpful, close your eyes. Soften your face. And if you're starting to need more, you have a couple options. You can scoot your butt toward the chair. You can also start to slide your right ankle down the thigh toward the crease of the groin and thigh. And now wherever you have it, you're going to kind of keep your shin where it is right now, but you're going to walk your left foot to the right edge of the chair. And then just see what happens when you let the legs kind of fall toward the chair. You're just kind of helping your hips still stay open, but more in a passive way. So you're kind of just letting the legs fall toward the chair. So your left foot is under your right thigh. Just a few breaths there. Try to control that gapping between the lumbar spine and the floor. Take the tailbone toward the ceiling, compact your front ribs. Those will help. Those actions will help. And now you're going to kind of come through a bound angle pose. So you can bring your feet together on the chair edge. Let the knees just kind of drop toward the floor. You can move your hands to your belly, give your arms a rest. And we'll just pause here before we go to the other side. And then go ahead and bring your feet back so that your heels are kind of on the edge of the chair. And you'll cross the left ankle to the right thigh. You might need a completely different setup here. Your hips are oftentimes very different with tension and their needs to support more opening in the hips. And then raising the arms again so that you can just really kind of focus on the sides of the torso staying very even, especially the right side. And just start to gently pressurize that left knee away from your chest. Keep your chin tilted into the chest, your eyes probably closed, your face soft. Just imagine your own breath finding its way into the left hip area. And again, as you need more, the butt can come closer to the chair, the ankle can slide down the thigh. The shin can also move toward midline. That's another way to deepen the sensation. And then we'll just kind of inch the right foot to the left edge of the chair. Roll to the outer right foot and just kind of let the legs fall toward the chair. It might be kind of lopsided, but do your best to keep the torso sides very long and even. Still pressing that left knee away from the chest. Trying to seal the lower back toward the floor. And then just let the left foot slide so the feet can join for Uphavishta Konasana, again, bound angle. Resting on the outer feet, the feet are elevated. Hands can move back to the belly. And hopefully you can be very passive here. The groins can just kind of soften and extend. The hips can be easy and open. And go ahead and start to bring the knees closer, and you can help your feet down and roll to one side. I'm going to put the chair aside now. And you're going to be working with one block on your strap. We're going to do our bridge pose in two different ways. So the first way, we're going to have the sacrum supported with a low, medium, or tall horizontal surface of your block. And we're going to contain the arms with the palms up in a loop that we're going to make with the strap. So you can go ahead and make that loop. We want the wrist only slightly closer, or only slightly wider than your shoulders. So you can kind of slide your wrists in and see about your wrist just being slightly wider than your shoulders. That's going to be good. And then you can just kind of leave that loop on one arm for now as you place your bridge block under your sacrum. And again, we're horizontally working with the block here. And you pick your height. And you're going to take both wrists inside the loop with your palms up. And you're going to try to roll your thumbs toward the floor. The pinkies lift a little higher so that the outer upper arms come down and the inner upper arms move up. And you'll feel your shoulder blades, therefore, coming into the chest. The chest and chin come together. And your toes, of course, are aligning in front of the heels. And even though you have that block there doing a lot of the support, still moving the tailbone toward the ceiling. And keep some effort going in the arms so that the outer upper arms keep anchoring into the floor so that the shoulder blades continue to support the lifting and spreading of your chest. Keeping some weight in your feet, which will encourage your tailbone, your pelvic tilt. Just 3 more breaths. Just observing the breath, how it's showing up here, this particular pose. Noticing the relationship of an open diaphragm to the exhalation, the extent of the exhalation. And we're going to just start to soften those efforts. take a moment to lift your block out from under you. We're going to be putting it right back, but I want you to take the loop you've made now to your ankles. And maybe make it a little bit, adjust the loop enough that you want your feet only slightly wider than your hips, so not a lot more. And then you're going to go back and place your block again. Maybe the same height, maybe you've graduated to different height. And then try to recreate the arms, even though you don't have that strap holding them. You're doing the same work of kind of making the wrists only a little bit wider than the shoulders. The palms are up, the outer upper arms are rotating down, the inner upper arms are rotating up. And then begin to extend your legs one at a time. So you're resting on the heels and your toes are above the heels. Pressing the heels into the floor. And just kind of snuggling the chin down toward the chest. With eyes closed, pointing your gaze toward your cheeks. Noticing if you can find that pause at the end of the exhalation. Now start to gently soften the limbs, step the feet back toward your buttocks and lift your block out from under you. And you can remove the strap from the ankles and make the strap loop as small as you need to fit the size of one foot. And then you can put it over your right foot. So it's holding your right foot. And we'll extend the right leg up and just wrap your left hand around your strap so that your knuckles are covered. You're going to keep your left leg grounded. We're coming into revolving hand to big toe pose. It's our last pose before Pranayama. Just to get a good twist after those back bends to soothe the nervous system. So you're going to carry your right leg to the left. You'll try to stack your hips. You might have to lift and slide your left hip kind of more under you. You can keep your bottom leg bent if you need to, or you can fully extend it, but be on the outer edge of the leg and foot, the left leg and foot. And either leaving your right hand on your side ribs or unfolding the arm with the palm up, looking toward the right hand or looking up at the ceiling. And just gently trying to bring those right outer ribs back toward the floor. Legs moving left, torso moving right. Just a gentle wringing of the spine. Noticing how exhale shows up in twisting action. And just easing over to your back slowly and gently. Make sure to realign yourself once you are centered on your back. And then just carefully transfer your little loop to your left foot. Keep the right knee bent as we extend the left leg. Make sure to wrap the hand, conserve energy there. And then you'll just carry your left leg all the way to the right, extending the bottom leg, maybe keeping it bent. Keeping your right hand as close to your left foot as you can, and your left foot as close to your shoulder line as you can. Left hand over the side waist or unfolding the arm, and then either looking up or off to the left. Observing the breath flow here. Noticing sensations that are welcomed in here. Softening where there's no effort required of this pose. Maybe where your bottom leg is meeting the floor. Maybe the forehead or jaw. Peeling those left ribs back to the floor with those elongated exhalations that the twist really promotes. And start to bring yourself back. Take your strap away from your foot. Take a moment to just kind of recenter on your back. Just take as long as you need. Just kind of integrate that. And then you're going to be setting up for Pranayama. So we want to make elevation for the chest and the head. You can simply use a bolster and the additional blanket for the head. You could use the tiered blanket setup where you tri-fold 2 blankets. And I can remind you of that setup here. You open the rectangular blanket and working with the long end of it, you kind of make the letter Z, like a zigzag. You do that so that you have kind of even folding. You don't have a bulky one side. And then you're going to work with the floor being one level. And you're going to end up with 4 different heights. The floor, then the staggered blankets create heights 2 and 3. And then you can roll the top like a snail for that 4th height, which will be for your head. We want the chin and chest together in Pranayama. And then you'll come down onto your setup and just kind of fine tune it so that the lumbar doesn't have any blanket. The butt is on the floor. The first section of blanket is kind of hitting the lower back above the lumbar. And then that second section of blanket is right behind the rib cage. And then the third section, of course, is you're going to fit under your head so your chin and chest come together. And then open the feet wide enough that you feel kind of a broadness in the lower abdomen and the sacrum. Make sure you're warm enough, so cover up if you need some warmth, and cover your eyes if your eyes have trouble staying closed. Make sure your arms are unfolded in a way that the armpits can aerate and that you're not touching anything with your fingertips or your toes. Glasses are off. So Kumbhaka wasn't really taught for beginner pranayama practitioners, but Kumbhaka is breath retention. And what I thought we'd do today is just explore the exhale to its vanishing point. And just start to observe that pause at the end of the breath, not really trying to force it yet or create it, but see if we can just kind of start to familiarize ourselves with that point between exhale and inhale. And this point, if we can start to cultivate it over time, is really one of the key ways that we can quiet our sense organs, if we can work with breath retention on the out breath. So it can take us to a very still point of consciousness. So just begin with your Ujjayi exhale, where you are lightly constricting the muscle in the back of the throat to create a very small closing of the aperture of the throat. You can usually hear a noise, and when you can hear the noise, you can really kind of zoom in on it and make it more steady and smooth. You might need to do a few easy in and out breaths after these Ujjayi exhales. So remember that we really don't ever want to irritate or agitate the body or the brain in pranayama. So you have to be really kind of abiding to the nervous system. And you're still watching for unnecessary gripping. And this might not show up physically anymore, gripping, but it could be mental gripping. You're thinking too hard about the pranayama. You're forcing it. So just kind of watching for that unnecessary effort that takes us out of or away from the goal of pranayama. And so starting this way, we're just kind of cultivating the exhale. And after your next Ujjayi exhale attempt, just come back to easy breathing. And we're going to take 8 breaths, just kind of following the exhale out. You're not going to strive to find that pause. You're just following the exhale out with your attention, noticing if there is a pause. If there isn't a pause, you're just simply inhaling after the exhale. But just 8 breaths with your full attention to the exhale and possibly that tiny little pause before you breathe in. And after your next exhale, just start to gently move to your side just to remove your pranayama blankets. And you might leave a thin layer of support for your head. You're just going to spend a minute in Shavasana, completely passive with the body and the breath. Just fully entering the witness state, letting all the effort of this practice go. The asana effort, the pranayama effort. You're going to start to gently make your way to your side. Spend a few moments on your side. And then try to come up to seated in a way that's minimizing effort. Keeping the brain quiet, keeping the body in a surrendered state. You're just going to find yourself sitting upright, joining the hands together in front of the heart. And taking a moment to acknowledge how you feel. Let's take a big breath in through the nose and let it go. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. All right. Thank you all for being here again. No class Friday, so I hope everybody has an awesome week. And I'll see you next week, I hope. Take care.